My name is Khadija. I am 62 years old, and I live in a small stone house perched in the hills outside Fez, Morocco. This house, built by my father's calloused hands, has been my sanctuary. Its walls, smoothed by time and weathered by desert winds, hold the echoes of my life. I was born here, fell in love with my husband Omar under its low ceilings, and raised my only son Yusuf in its sunlit rooms. The scent of mint tea and baked bread lingers, mingling with memories of laughter, prayers, and quiet evenings. But now, the silence is a heavy guest, filling the spaces where voices once lived. Omar passed away 8 years ago, his heart giving out one quiet morning. His absence left the house too vast, too hollow. I spend my days tending to the olive trees in the yard, sweeping the tiled floors, and rereading Omar's poetry books, their pages yellowed but precious. I avoid his prayer mat in the corner, afraid its softness will unravel me. Yusuf was my light. At 21, he left for France to study architecture, his eyes bright with dreams of designing grand buildings. He promised to return, to build us a new home with wide windows and a garden for me. In Paris, he found work, married a woman named Claire, and had 2 sons, Amir and Sami, whom I've only seen in grainy photos sent years ago. At first, his calls came weekly, filled with stories of Parisian cafes and sketches he'd drawn. I'd sit by the phone, smiling at his voice, imagining his life. Then the calls slowed, once a month, then once a year. Emails turned to brief texts, then nothing. I kept his childhood toys in a carved wooden box, his school certificates on a shelf, and his first pair of shoes under my bed. Every morning, I checked my phone, hoping for a sign. I prayed for him at dawn, even as his silence carved deeper wounds in my heart. One spring afternoon, as the hills bloomed with wildflowers, a knock echoed through the house. Visitors are rare. The neighbors are kind but distant, and the postman leaves letters in a rusted box by the gate. My hands trembled as I opened the door. There stood Yusuf, a worn suitcase at his feet. He looked older, thinner, with dark circles framing his eyes, but his smile was the same, wide, like the boy who chased goats in the yard. I pulled him into my arms, tears soaking his jacket. My son was home. I brewed mint tea, the kettle hissing as I set out sesame cookies I'd baked that morning. We sat at the old cedar table, its surface scarred from years of meals. He said the house felt unchanged, the same woven rugs, the same chipped teapot. I told him it was quieter now, slower, lonelier without him and Omar. Our words were cautious, heavy with years of distance. When Yusuf spoke, his voice was soft, almost hesitant. He said Paris had been relentless, long hours, endless deadlines, the weight of providing for his family. He missed me, missed the smell of my cooking, the warmth of home. He apologized for the silence, saying life had swept him away like a river. I wanted to ask why he stopped calling, why he let me fade from his world, but I couldn't. His presence was a fragile gift, and I feared breaking it. Then he said something that stole my breath. He wanted me to move to Paris with him. He said his apartment had space, a room with a view of the Seine. He said his sons longed to meet their grandmother, that I shouldn't live alone in this aging house. I looked around at the walls painted with memories, the garden where Omar planted jasmine, the rug where Yusuf took his first steps. Could I leave this behind? The thought felt like pulling roots from the earth. That night, I lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling. I remembered Yusef's tiny hands clutching my fingers, Omar's laughter as he taught him to ride a bicycle. This house was my history, my anchor. But Yusef was my heart, my only child. The next morning, he was resolute. The house was too old, too far from a hospital, too hard to maintain alone. He suggested selling it, using the money for a new life in Paris. He promised to handle everything: flights, papers, a room of my own. My hands shook as I nodded. He was my son, and I trusted him with every piece of me. Over the next weeks, I packed slowly, each item a memory. I gave neighbors my clay tagine pots, their surfaces worn from years of stews. I donated blankets to the mosque, keeping only a small bag with my prayer beads, Omar's poetry book, and Yusef's childhood scarf, its blue threads faded but soft. The house was sold quickly, the money transferred to Yusef's account for our move. It felt like a dream, too swift to grasp. I walked through each room, touching the walls, whispering goodbye to Omar, to the life we built. As I closed the door for the last time, I pressed my lips to the stone frame, tears falling silently. At the airport, my heart raced. The terminal was a blur of voices and footsteps. Yusef carried my bag, guiding me through the chaos. He told me to wait near the gate while he sorted out our tickets. 10 minutes, he said, kissing my forehead. I sat, clutching my bag, watching families rush by, their suitcases rolling like promises. I believed we were starting anew, together. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 40. My chest tightened, a cold dread creeping in. I asked a clerk if she'd seen him, a tall man with dark hair carrying a suitcase. She shook her head, confused. After an hour, a security officer named Rashid approached, his eyes kind but serious. I showed him Yusuf's photo, my voice breaking as I explained. He checked his system, then sat beside me, his voice soft as a prayer. Yusuf had boarded the flight alone. The money, the house, my trust, all gone. I clutched Omar's book, its edges worn, unable to speak. My son had left me behind. Rashid said I couldn't stay at the airport. I had no one to call, nowhere to go. My home was sold, my savings gone. He offered to take me somewhere safe. Numb, I followed him to his car, a small Fiat parked under flickering lights. He drove me to his apartment in Fez, where his wife, Samira, welcomed me with a warm smile. She didn't ask questions, just handed me a cup of mint tea and a wool blanket. Their kindness felt like a rope pulling me from a dark well. That night, I slept in their guest room, a small space with a window overlooking a courtyard. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if Yusuf ever meant to take me with him, or if I'd been a fool to trust him. Days passed, each one heavy with grief. I overheard Rashid tell Samira the flight had crashed over the Mediterranean. No survivors. My heart shattered. Not just for the betrayal, but for the boy I'd raised, the one who drew pictures of houses and called me Mama. I cried silently, clutching Yusef's scarf, mourning the son I loved and the man who abandoned me. Samira sat with me, her hand on mine, saying nothing but offering her presence. Rashid brought small gifts, a book of proverbs, a jar of argan oil, a pair of soft slippers. They didn't push me to talk, just let me exist in their home. One morning, Samira suggested I join a women's cooperative in the Medina. "You have so much to share, Khadija," she said. I hesitated, unsure if my hands, worn from years of cooking and cleaning, had anything left to give. But I went, and they welcomed me like family. I started teaching recipes: herrera, thickened with lentils; urfissa, with its layers of bread and chicken; sweets dusted with powdered sugar. The women called me Haja Khadija, their laughter warming the ache in my chest. I began to smile again, to feel seen. One evening, as the call to prayer echoed over the city, I passed a market stall selling notebooks. I bought one with a red leather cover, its pages crisp and waiting. That night, I began writing, my childhood running through the hills, falling in love with Omar's quiet strength, Yusef's first words as he pointed at the stars. I wrote about the silence that followed his departure, the knock on the door that brought him back, and the betrayal that broke me. I wrote about Rashid and Samira, about kindness that bloomed where blood failed. Each word felt like a stone lifted from my heart, leaving me lighter, freer. Samira read my pages one evening, tears in her eyes. "This is a treasure, Khadija," she said. "Your story matters." They framed a photo of us three, taken at a picnic in a nearby park, labeled Our Khadija, Our Family. I cried when I saw it, not from pain, but from a warmth I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't alone anymore. I'd lost a son, a home, a life, but I'd found love in the hearts of strangers. The cooperative grew, more women joined my classes, and I taught more than recipes. I taught resilience, memory, care. Children from the Medina began calling me Tante Khadija, their small hands tugging at my scarf. One girl, Aisha, said I should publish my notebook. I laughed, but her words stayed with me. I kept writing, not for the world, but for myself, to make sense of the pain and the healing. Samira planted a small garden behind their apartment, letting me choose the seeds, mint, lavender, roses like the ones Omar loved. I sat there each morning, greeting the sun, Omar's book in my lap. Rashid built a bench for me, carved with simple patterns. One evening, as we ate couscous around their small table, Samira asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Yusef hadn't left?" I thought for a long moment, then said, "If he hadn't left, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have found you. I wouldn't have learned that family isn't just blood, it's the hands that hold you when you fall." Rashid reached across the table, his hand warm on mine. In that moment, I knew I'd lost a son, but I'd gained something just as precious, a home where I was wanted, a life rebuilt from kindness. Some losses break us, but others crack us open, letting light pour in. If this story touched your heart, please share where you're reading from. Knowing you're listening gives me strength.